Hello and welcome dear learners to the NPTEL course on Nutritional Epidemiology, a way towards a healthy life. In the Module 1 Foundation Principles of Nutritional Epidemiology for the Chapter 10, we'll be talking about the module summary and the key readings that we have considered for the entire module discussion that we have taken up. From the introduction part to the levels of nutrition exposure and to the cultural context, all that will be covered in a summary. So, to the introduction to the nutrition epidemiology, it examines the relationship between the dietary intake and the health outcomes in the population. Nutrition epidemiology focuses on the distribution and determinants of nutrition related conditions. So, whole lot of nutrition related conditions are very important to take it as a whole shape to consider it as a nutritional epidemiology. Nutritional epidemiology also integrates the nutrition science and epidemiological methods. It addresses the undernutrition, micronutrient deficiencies, and overnutrition and non-communicable disease. So, nutrition epidemiology examines the relationship. It examines the relationship of the diet and the health outcomes in the population. What are the dietary assessments need to be understood when we talk about the 24-hour dietary recall? The process part is very important, that what you have ate yesterday or what you have yet ate today or day before yesterday. So the past 24 hours are very important actually to be considered when you talk about the 24-hour dietary recall. The process part, the retrospective interviews or single or multiple days or detailed state. What are the strength? If you have to say the strength, the low respondent burden is very being seen as a strength. Detailed data on the specific day comes to you and it becomes a very important reasons to conduct a 24-hour dietary recall. In clinical settings, it is being seen as some of the major reasons that a dietary assessment is done. What are the weaknesses that you need to give a recall bias? Doesn't capture the usual intake and it is sometimes to be rejected only because of these reasons. The frequency questionnaire, the food frequency questionnaire, the FFQ, comes as a process which is a retrospective usual intake and checklist of the food and drinks, which is to be seen as a quantitative way of detailing and a very subjective, not covering the subjective part but an objective part of the element. The strength is like it is a self-administered and a very low cost where you don't have to spend more or to invest more, but it captures the usual intake and over a long period of time you can take up this, and food frequency questionnaires are becoming very popular. The weakness is like relies on the memory of the person individual, which doesn't take the subjective reasons and frequency is lower. So less details are being specified on the meals. The food dietary records actually, which is also being seen as a very important assessment, that is of a process driven, where prospective recording is there, timing, amount, quality, quantity. So measurement is something very important over there. The strength is like it is a very real time and fewer biases are there, and sometimes it can be seen as a very accurate way of dealing actually the assessment. The proportion sizes and all that comes very important. But on the other side, the weaknesses is like the high respondent burden, and you may find that lot of food habits which are altered are not being taken into consideration, which makes it little difficult in terms of the compliance part. The biomarkers which are being seen very popular but are very costly and in terms of very expensive and making it more invasive, that all your metabolic factors are being covered over here. It captures actually to all those things actually which comes as something like an urine nitrogen protein or the processes that makes a reason actually that your sample collection, whether it's a urine sample or your blood sample or your lab analysis, major reasons actually that it's more like an objective measurement. And does it rely on your memory reporting, which makes more reasons that a lot of psychological involvement are being seen stated over here. In terms of understanding the conceptual frameworks in the nutritional epidemiology, the diet disease causal pathway is very important to see that health outcomes are more derived, especially in conditions like NCDs, diabetes, hypertension, and also conditions like HIV or cancer are more because of the physiological changes that has grounded actually with the co-founders. The intermediary markers are very important and the diet intake is being driven to be seen as a diet disease causal relationship, where the life course approach towards the nutrition and health is being seen with the critical periods where your preconceptions of pregnancy or even the geriatric age group or pediatric age groups or adolescents who require more energy are more epigenetics actually, which is more like a cumulative exposure, which is very important over here. So life course approach towards nutrition and health is something which is very important to be seen as a very important conceptual framework in the nutritional epidemiology. The social determinants no doubt play a major role, where the social environment, which comes more from the food accessibility, affordability, or sometimes the downstream factors actually to see that what a diet or your lifestyle plays a more reasons of giving you a health equity. The outcomes of your disease burden are more derived from your education, income, employment, and social support. The built-in environment or structural discrimination gives us a reason that upstreaming factors and makes more important reason for nutritional epidemiology to take it into consideration. Also, the increasing reasons of interactive framework, which is being very popular to state about the biological, behavioral, and environmental factors which contributes to come from the major four streams. The biology, the genetic physiology, which gives a reason actually to understand what are the link actually for the nutritional epidemiology over there. Also, the food choices from the physiology part, additionally with the dietary choices which are coming from the physical activity and inactivity. Environment plays a major role on the food access of the built up and the policy recommendation, which comes major reasons of the environmental factors to be connected with behavioral and biological reasons. Ecological models of nutrition and health, where as a social, structural and interpersonal, which are more driven to be interlinked with the community, and then it is more pointing towards individual rather not going from individual to the social structural factors. So ecological model and nutrition has also in some sort of a highlight which is being seen as an binding reasons to commit as a very important conceptual framework. Multiple level framework from the nutritional epidemiological studies which are pointed as from the major that we have discussed in the previous chapters about the analysis method, and the levels of influence which may be more pointing from the society as a large rather than not to be seen from the neighborhood but as an individual also to be considered. So it gives more reasons that a multiple level framework are also one reason that all the nutritional epidemiological studies are being stated. I have to cover the conceptual part of this. Nutrition and population health, where the changing patterns actually of the diet and even the malnutrition burden that we are facing, and also the reasons that we still have a pending burden of antenatal care, or even sometimes we may find that malnutrition status of the children particularly are being concentrated more in a lot of your nutritional programs, are highlighting because of the poor population health that we are getting because of food transition. Nutrition transition and changing dietary patterns. Double burden of malnutrition, where you have undernutrition as well as overnutrition in being seen as a balance, which is also being seen as a major problem that our country is facing. As stated, the role of nutrition in maternal and child health give more emphasis on the extra requirement or sometimes deficient part, which gives major disease condition to be seen in the entire 9 months, 9 days of period. Nutrition and non-communicable disease, where NCDs are more being projected towards in the current programs that we find in the all national health programs, where NP-NCD program is more focusing towards the major three, especially diabetes, hypertension and cancer. Additionally with addictions, and also for all those programs which are more covering the nutritional part, especially for the people who are derived with HIV/AIDS and even for tuberculosis driven chronic conditions. Impact of nutrition on immunity with respect to the geriatric population and pediatric population plays a major role to identify that the nutrition challenges are more according to the age and vulnerability of sex and even of deprived population, we mean to say vulnerable population groups. The burden of malnutrition and public health priorities. The indicators will point out towards a nutrition status which comes with stunting, wasting and even to be seen with age. Epidemiological traits actually which gives micronutrients deficiency more importance, where epidemiology of micronutrient plays a major role in terms of the deficiency particularly of iron, vitamin A, zinc and even vitamin B12. Iron to be seen as one of very specific reason which comes with the absorption part, where the availability of vitamin A is in terms of the expenses, and also the readily availability of the pure form of the salt gives a reason actually for the micronutrient deficiencies. The DALIs, which is very important, where your disease burden actually in terms of the nutrition related disease burden comes as your daily deposits, like how you are taking it versus how you are expending it. The priority nutritional problems in low and middle income countries are increasing more and are being seen with respect to the utilization versus availability and affordability part, which makes more reasons that the burden of malnutrition should be tackled in a measure of the health programs. So public health nutrition intervention strategies need to be focused more with respect to the vulnerabilities, especially with gender, age groups and income groups. The setting priorities for nutrition programs should be driven not only with equality but equity aspects, where the nutrition policy should try to prioritize for the nutrition policies and programs driven not from the country needs but from the vulnerabilities that the population, the people in the countries with respect to their state or even with the regional problems that they are facing. The levels of nutrition exposure. Nutrition based approach versus the food based approach and dietary pattern approach were discussed, where you find that most of the reasons that practical approach is being selected more is more because of the availability part, where the reductionist approach is more towards the micro or the selective approaches of the food pattern, or particularly as a nutrition to be taken, where the dietary pattern approach is being a holistic, which is being recommended, where it takes more reasons actually to have a lot of inclusion is to be taken and as being seen as very idealistic, but what is to be seen is more accepted is more the food based approach, which is from the community point of view. So level of nutrition exposure is also very important to discussion. The basics of nutrition science, the classification of macro and micronutrient is also being covered, where your carbohydrate, proteins and fats plays equal role on giving you more energy of larger amount, where your micronutrient essentially are in the trace elements that you have to consume, where you cannot reject even though in a trace that you have to take a mineral or a vitamin, which sometimes you find that a role of water soluble, particularly vitamin C is also very important versus to the fat soluble vitamin D, which is also playing a major role. You cannot ignore the very important essential medium of life, that is water. That also is a very important part which covers the balance of the three things that is very important for the nutrition science. Ethical part and equity part already discussed, which is playing a major role for the ethical principles in nutrition science to be seen as more from the conflict of interest additional with justice and beneficence, where the respect for person always lie very important and very first in terms of getting the informed consent, not to be ignored but to be filled with the requirement that a research is more focusing on, whether it is of a vulnerable group, whether it is of an ethnic group or even for the aging pattern and also for the sex. Equity nutrition research, which should represent actually all population age group rather not ignoring the minorities, especially ethnic minorities, elderly population and children. Applicability across the socio-economic group should be finding towards more reasons that you should give an accessibility as a prime importance, especially for lower to middle and high income groups, where the benefit only should not be focused towards urban population and ignoring the rural population. The gap should not reinforce existing inequalities but should try to curb up or to avoid the exploitative practices. Should also address the power imbalances and design the study to reduce the health disparities. So this becomes the foundation for the responsible and impactful science, which gives us a reason that ethics and equity plays a major role in nutrition research. Cultural context no doubt plays a very important and influences the diet, where the traditional food practices to be played more important role, where the social eating habits should not be diminished but to be increased. Perceptions of certain food habits need to be erased with respect to food patterns to be included in inclusion, and health education towards the food practices should be given. Cultural sensitivity principle of respecting of the cultural beliefs, avoiding cultural biases and language plays a major role in terms of reducing it. Cultural competencies in the healthcare professionals is very important to meet up these challenges and to make it more a reason for inclusion part. The overall module covers you the comprehensive overview of nutritional epidemiology, focusing on how dietary factors influence the population health. It covers the key methods for dietary assessment and highlights the conceptual framework. The role of nutrition in both communicable and non-communicable disease is being highlighted, and the burden of malnutrition, which is giving more reasons that how the introduction of this nutrition methodology at the levels of nutritional exposure and reinforced foundational concept is also being discussed. Ethical consideration of equity, cultural context are highlighted on essential components, and conducting inclusion impactful research is very important. So overall, the module gives you integrated scientific, social and practical perspectives to support the evidence-based nutrition policies and intervention. With this, we come an end to this module particularly, and with this chapter, giving you reasons actually for all the reasons, the references listing is being put over here to connect you to the deep understanding and reading for this particular chapter's stated structural part of that. So with this, thank you very much.